Hey everybody, we are back, and I have there's a stray tail, but don't worry about it. He's just very excited for this week's episode. Um, Welcome to Pop Culture SquadCast. Mike, how are you doing?
Doing okay. I've only got one cat here at the moment. The other one may come at any second.
Okay, well, it's a cat-friendly show. We all love cats. Um, so there's a lot of big things happening in the world of pop culture these days. Most interestingly, this week is San Diego Comic-Con, and our guest will be coming live from San Diego. So that sounds interesting. How many? I know it's been a long time since you've been there, but when was the first time you went to San Diego?
Wow. Sometime in the 70s.
In the 70s.
Yeah.
Were you working for DC? Did DC go to show stuff like that?
I'm thinking very late 70s, maybe even 1980, 81. It's hard to remember. All I remember is they still had Hypnosex. And it was still
Hypnosex or sect?
Hypnosex was just, I mean, I never went in, and I don't know anybody who ever did, but it really sounded interesting. And also, in those days, it was like before AIDS, but it sounded safer.
Okay, hang on one second. Wait a second. So there was a business called Hypnosex?
Yeah, it was sort of halfway between the hotel and where the convention center is now. So it's like in the it was in the downtown San Diego area. I'm guessing over the years it got priced out of existence.
How much was it?
Well, the good citizens of San Diego, and this is like, I guess this is in the 80s now, maybe 90s, got rid of their mayor who hated the Comic-Con and elected a mayor who fully understood how much money the San Diego Comic-Con brought into San Diego, which is trillions. I mean, well, no. To be fair, though, billions.
Yeah, I would say at least hundreds of millions.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Bob.
At least hundreds of millions.
Well, it's the pass along value in total.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So people who come there and maybe even hang out or get there early to be tourists, there's all kinds of money that comes into that place. And you can tell because, let me tell you something, I was there in January once for an IDW meeting, and the hotel charges were much, much lower than during the convention. Much lower.
Yeah, I'm sure that is like price gouging is got to be just like ridiculous. But so at what point do you recollect that it became a thing where publishers had to go or show up? Like, was when you were with First, did you guys go as First?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I can probably hear you better now. And for all those out there in viewer land, I can hear you too, so watch it.
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
Wow. Anyway, I don't recall First. I think so. Oh, I know we were there. I mean, that's how we got Mars. The Wheatley Hempel book, not the planet. I had been there beforehand as a fan. I don't think I was there for DC during my first tenure. I was definitely there each year when I was with DC as an editor, and for many years after that, it was a fun show. I don't get along as well as I used to. I have a cane and stuff.
Sure.
And the invention of the backpack has been dissuasive because I know that I'm carrying a weapon. I'm carrying this cane. And some idiot is going to slap me in the head with their backpack. I'm going to kill them. So it's just I'm going to lose it, you know. So I should just not go to the show because they don't need the bad publicity. I don't care personally. You know, Gold killed somebody else. Okay, fine, but they don't need it. So on behalf of the convention, I don't go.
Well, I mean, this is a different Comic-Con. We're going to see how it plays out over the next few days. The fact that the actors are not going to be there,
Right,
is going to make a difference. It's funny because I've seen a bunch of folks say, "Oh, we're just a comic book convention again." You know, is that what we're going to do here? Which is,
sweet.
San Diego, yeah, San Diego is a different animal, but there are going to be plenty of comic book people, and I mean, I think some of the studios are going to be there, but it's only going to be like the studios and producers and stuff like that. There is not going to be any actors.
Technically, directors can show up. Technically,
yeah, sure, but
you're not going to see any actors. You're not going to see any writers,
right?
And those who write comics and also work for movies and television, those folks are going to have a kind of a tough time because I guess they could show up for the comic book stuff.
So, I mean, I've had this conversation, and there's tons of people going back and forth online about, what constitutes breaking a picket line or doing scab work or whatever it is. And to me, it doesn't make any sense for someone not to be able to profit off of their celebrity as they would normally.
I think that's true, but I think that the working definition is, and it fits what you just said, but it's anything that inures to the benefit of those against whom you're taking action.
Sure.
So if you're promoting something for the producers, and that should not be during the strike.
Right, but so the guy who was the other kid in Weird Science is going to be at a comic show. I don't think he's promoting anything that is right. So, I mean, if people want to get his autograph or take pictures and stuff like that, I mean, like, it's different when there's somebody who's promoting something active that's on. I mean, obviously, I agree with that. But it's going to be interesting over the next couple of months to see how this plays out. This obviously is kind of like people are taking a quick stand here on San Diego, but shows will start happening again next week. Next week, I will be at Terrificon up in Connecticut, and there's a bunch of people supposed to be there, and we'll see how that happens. There's supposed to be a bunch of, I mean, Terrificon is an interesting.
This has never happened before during big conventions.
Sure.
So we don't know, even the small conventions. So there's no history to draw on here. And at this moment in time, everybody involved has a lot on their plate. San Diego came up real fast on the heels of the strikes. So this is something that has to be worked out. And it won't be worked out in time for San Diego, certainly. Probably not, for any conventions this early this summer.
Right. I mean, to be honest with you, the interesting part about it was that a lot of there's been goings-ons, but a lot of studios pulled out of San Diego early, and it seemed to be that there was some rumblings even then that it was in anticipation of not having to have tons of cancellation fees because they expected this to happen.
Yeah, I don't fully believe that. I think that particularly if you look at what the majors, Disney to a minor extent because they're cheap, so how can you tell the difference? But it's not Time Warner anymore. What are they calling it this week? Warner Brothers.
They're going to be there.
Yeah, but
They didn't pull out.
Yeah, but they're not having the actors and all that because they're not going to show up. So they're saving money, and they're doing everything they can to save every penny they can, because it's sort of like the Twitter deal. When Discovery bought them, the stock was worth a lot more. And then it tanked. And all of a sudden, what they spent a couple billion for is now worth less.
Right.
So a lot of really interesting sounding projects get shit canned, even after they're finished.
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be wreckage. I mean, there's no two ways about this.
I think there's opportunity for people to have a better time.
I mean, at the show,
and also, I mean, all of these shows coming up.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Maybe more so the later ones than San Diego.
We are absolutely, in agreement. I think that there's an opportunity for people. People should still go to Comic-Cons just because there's not somebody to get your autograph with. There's so many things to find and learn about and explore and talk to people who do amazing things, like our guest, which we are going to get to very shortly. He is in the green room, so for those waiting, he will be there shortly. I want to talk, and we're going to spend a lot. We're going to talk to Thom about his career and what's going to happen, what he's going to be doing at Comic-Con. But I want to also talk. Part of the reason why I wanted him on, because I want to talk about Star Trek, and we're going to talk about a fandom, not necessarily promoting a particular show, but we'll see how that works.
I think we'll wind up promoting a show or two.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's about one of the things, and I don't want this to be a recurring theme, but it is in some ways. There is one of the things I enjoy talking to you about. It's like, what a world was like before San Diego Comic-Con, but you also know what a world was like before Star Trek existed. Like, I don't. It's been my whole life.
Yeah.
I remember
dinosaurs were roaming the earth and all that. Right.
I don't. Yeah. It's not that. It's not that like that. But like, you grew up, and when you grew up, there wasn't Captain Kirk. Like, he didn't. There wasn't. It wasn't there. Like,
I saw the first episode when it was broadcast.
Right. So what was that like? What was seeing something so different at that moment?
Well, I was like 14, 15, and I had sort of like a girlfriend, kind of, to the extent that anybody that age does. And she was very excited by Star Trek. Now, I'm a science fiction fan, so I have absolutely no problem with that. That's great. I wasn't as enthusiastic about that first episode as she was. So it was incumbent upon me to try harder. So I watched the next couple, and I got into it. So my hormones have something to do with my affection for Star Trek, and I think I'm just being honest about it. I think most guys who went through that experience have a little of that. The thing about Star Trek is that both the fandom and TV shows always attracted a larger female audience than one would think. You think about science fiction, you think about boys and, Hollywood, large-breasted astronauts and things like that, or at least I do. And wasn't the case for Star Trek, and it wasn't the case a little bit later on for X-Men. So it's okay. I'm grateful to Star Trek for expanding our pop culture universe by acknowledging half of humanity.
So you just threw that out there, though. But so you're saying that you feel that X-Men is an access point to comics for female readers.
I think it was. I don't know if it still is.
But when Chris was writing it, is what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely, and not just. I mean, when Louise was writing some of that, and all kinds of folk. It was. You could see women in the group more so than any other. That's probably because there were more people than any other group. But I think Chris really started that in terms of expanding the female.
Did you see that in fandom? Did you see that change when?
Yes, I saw it at the stores.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that at the stores in Chicago, being part of the Chicago Comic-Con and all that, and the fandom stuff back in the whatever it was 17th century. I had a pretty good relationship with a great many comic store owners, and I could watch that happen. And being who I am, this little media mogul, even before DC, I asked about that. My political agenda, of course, would allow me to perhaps to see it when other people who didn't have that political agenda couldn't care less, but I cared. And then when I got to DC, I cared desperately about bringing in as many women readers as humanly possible, because my job was to, sell comics. And I'm not sure if we succeeded during that 2-year tenure, but I brought all that over First Comics, and we did succeed there.
Which is
very much.
Which is interesting because on the surface, First doesn't appear to be extremely accessible to a female reader on the surface. Where do you think Where do you think the breakthrough happens? How did that? Do you think it was Sable or the sexual tension involved in American Flag, and what do you think was the access? Well, Mars obviously was great access.
Yes,
for that.
But to your comment about Sable and Flag, my answer is yes to Sable and Flag.
Mm-hmm.
John Sable had wonderful relationships with a strong supporting female cast.
Yes.
Which is not something you might have expected from Mike Grell's fantasy work,
right?
His initial stuff. So his relationship with his artist, with his agent, these are major characters in the series, and also within a few months we added a gay character,
right,
to that group, but not on Mike's part, not for political reasons. On my part, you bet. But it wasn't my decision; it was Mike's.
Well, that's interesting because Mike, I saw Mike at Heroes, and he talked about that on the panel. The person who was running the panel specifically asked about that character, and Mike talked about how it came out. It was to him, as he recalls it, which we'll see how well Mike's recollection is accurate, but the way he recalls it, it was just very natural for him, for that character to be that way.
Oh, absolutely. There's no two ways about it. Mike didn't do it for political reasons. Had I written it, somebody might infer that, but not Mike. It was for the story. It was reasonable. It was, we encouraged everybody to be as aware of what was going on in the world as possible, to bring that into their work as possible, because people like to be able to relate to something, and says, oh, that's Earth, I live there. Okay. Oh, that's a gay guy. That's interesting. Fine. If you don't like it, don't buy the book. If you do like it, and I am not aware of anybody not buying the book because of Gray's presence, terrific. And there's somebody there that you can look to and say, at least one person that you can look to and say, hey, that dude's like me.
Yeah.
And that's cool. That's important.
Awesome. That's fantastic. All right. I don't want to keep our guest waiting any longer. He's over there. He's probably like on crazy sleep time because he traveled from Cleveland to San Diego today.
He's just
the ass crack of dawn. And so I'm gonna bring him in, and then we'll start talking about some other stuff. Here we go. Hey,
Hey, Tom.
Hey, how was the flight?
I can't believe I've flown millions of miles to get here. The flights were uneventful and crash-free, just the way I like them. On top of that, I flew Southwest, and there's that one exit row that has the one seat that has no seat in front of it, which is built
Right.
for people of height like me. I managed to get it both ways. So,
All right.
You have multiple flights. That's fantastic.
yeah.
Was it green both ways?
Connected in Chicago.
Was it
it
green
what,
flight?
both ways?
Green lights both times?
Oh no, green lights were just on the first flight. That was so weird.
Okay.
Yeah. I tend to tweet a lot when I'm in airports because I have nothing else to do. But I'm hoping that I didn't use up all my good karma for the beginning of the show, and then it's just going to be, a disaster after this. But
so what do you think? How is your experience being there this afternoon? What's the vibe? Did you go to the hall yet?
Oh yeah, I've set up.
You set up.
Yeah.
It's a part day. It's a part day today. Is that right?
Tomorrow is preview night.
Night. So you're all set, ready to go. How does it?
Mm-hmm.
How are things there? What is your experience?
I don't know. The city doesn't feel right. Like everything feels under construction. The hotel I'm at is actually kind of like nickel and diming in a way that it didn't used to. So that it feels a little persnickety, and I'm not sure why. And I don't believe in any sort of monocausal explanation. So I'm sure there are lots of reasons for it. The vibe on the floor from the limited number of people I've talked to is ranges from curiously optimistic to this is going to be a disaster. And I admit I'm kind of here for it in the same reason that I like the end of How I Met Your Mother, because I figured it out before it happened. That's why I passively aggressively posted a tweet of Ethan Hunt saying, you knew we would end up here, but then again, so did I. Because I saw this coming a while away, and I didn't understand why nobody was talking about it, and I didn't understand why nobody was preparing for it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it coming too. I saw people talking about it. Pretty much as soon as the writer's strike happened, people were. That's about that time is when everybody started saying a lot of publishers and production companies said they weren't going to be there. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, and
I think it's going to be wonderful because people who had $300-400 in their pocket to spend on autographs, many of them still have that money in their pocket, and maybe it'll be spread around to the dealers and that sort of stuff, and make it a more profitable show for them. And people are buying stuff that presumably they're likely to enjoy, so they'll have that cool stuff to remind them, which I think it's more fun to have some sort of elaborate comic book that's ridiculously overpriced than it is to have a signature of somebody that you see on TV 3 or 4 times a year. But what the hell, it's a fan experience.
Right. Yeah, the thing I'm curious about is I don't know how much overlap there is between spending and Hall H, because Robert Downey Jr. was not signing autographs for a couple $100 under the sales. Like, I don't know how many of the people who were there to sleep overnight and see pretty people talk about their movie, I don't know how many of those people are bringing money to spend. I think just from the standpoint that there's a better chance that they'll be down in the sewers with us, that it'll be exposure, because I think there will be less things for people to go see. So it's more opportunity for people to buy things and make connections. But I'm not sure how much the money factors in, just because San Diego isn't like the Reed shows where the actors are coming to do photo ops. It's
right.
The actors are separate from the photo ops. So I don't know how much that crosses over.
Are there photo? I mean, I haven't been there. Are there people don't come for photo ops? So there aren't that type of stuff isn't set up at San Diego.
I never go upstairs. I
Right.
don't know of any.
I didn't think you did, but you know. I
My
you
world
just
is
go,
a 10 by 10.
you're in the
booth,
goblins
and
with
that's
the
all I see. Yeah. I can see Brian Toledo. I can see the Aunt Annie's pretzel cart. That's my world. And John Gallagher will be behind me. And there are Pop-Tarts at the table. That's my world.
I understand.
Wait. They have Annie's pretzels at San Diego?
Yeah, they're in the hallway. And I'm at Booth 2000 where I've been for about the last 20 years. And it's a great location anyway, but it's also right, like it's the closest distance you can get without being on the back wall to the men's room. Which, when the con is so busy, you actually have to think in terms of, well, I might need to go use the bathroom in half an hour, so I better leave now. And we're kind of in optimal position to get in and out there. And then there's an Aunt Annie's just past that. So if you need your mid-afternoon pretzel, because there's not a lot of good food options there, survival's first order of business.
I'd start with breakfast. I really like those pretzels.
Part of the reason I picked this hotel. It is a free all-you-can-eat breakfast, and it's a real breakfast with omelets and everything. Yeah, no, I stock up here because I never know when I'm going to eat again.
I understand that all too well. One of the beautiful things, the three of us are always at the Baltimore convention. I mean, the comic book convention, and that's only once a year, but we've been there a billion times together. And I have to admit that lately, certainly, I haven't been to the autograph stuff or any of that stuff either. It's not part of my life. It's cool. People don't stand in line for a half hour to spend $100 for an autograph unless they really want it. And I respect their going through all of that. But for me, it's like, oh, wow. So there's like some people I won't have to trip over. Cool.
Yeah. Baltimore is really good about being tactical about bringing people out. Like they bring out 3 or 4 media guests. I just did Fan Expo Denver, and that had a lot more media guest presence, and that like it was busy, and there were, it was a target rich environment. So I think that did play into how sales went, and it disrupts the flow because there's so many more reasons to not be on the show floor with the comics, whereas Baltimore, the whole reason is to be on the show floor with the comics.
Right.
I mean,
well said. Here.
From my perspective, as I said, Terrificon usually has a bunch of guests, and I don't know, I haven't seen anything that they're not going to be there, but they do it in an interesting way where, and I like this, is that in order to get to the media guests, you have to go through the comic book people. You have to go through Artist Alley to get there. I mean, you can go around, but like it's very much in the way, which is great. I think that's fantastic. I think they do it well. They have a decent, it's not like New York that's just everybody who possibly has been in any show is there. And there are other shows, GalaxyCon is one of them, and Fan Expo that have quite a few actors. And I'm not disparaging them. I'm just saying that's how they build their shows. But it's not my thing. When I go to shows, I go to talk to friends, to find new comics, to talk to, people that I'm interested in talking to, buy some nerdy stuff. I have paid for one photo op for myself, but it was a selfie photo op, and it was with Nichelle Nichols. So I have no shame in that,
No.
There are, the ones I choose are very limited, but they are very particular. And that's it's a horrible factor, but it's the thing that gets in your head. That's like, oh, am I going to have another opportunity to meet astronaut and actor Mr. William Shatner? You start to,
I paid for an autograph for that.
Yes. Well, that was in his pre-astronaut days. Literally
2 days before he became an astronaut.
Is that true?
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yes.
I have.
I'll tell you the
print
story
of Kirk and all the ladies.
Actually, hang on. Let me bring that up, and I will show you because I have it set to go here. So yeah, go ahead. Tell her about the print.
Yeah, I have a print. I did it originally as a piece for New York for their auction, and it's Kirk backing away from a conga line of all the women that he kissed in Star Trek, with the exception of Ruth
Whoa.
because she was a robot double, and Uhura because they were forced. And it's canonical right up until Rand at the very end. And they didn't kiss on screen, but we all know they did. So. And it was interesting, like figuring out how they all walk different. Like if you look at the Edith Keeler one, she's very much blankly staring and not paying attention to anything. Just things like that.
That's a nice piece.
So he did this
Thank
piece, and it's beautiful, and I've always loved it. And I told him that he should get it signed, and his response to me was, "I've met him a couple of times, and I don't want to screw it up."
Yes.
So
I'm afraid that if I see him too many times, one of these times, he's just going to go, "Let me tell you why I hate tall Irish people." No.
So
I've met him a couple of times myself, and each time it was like a totally different guy with the same template. I mean, he always sounded like William Shatner, but he'd act and just differently and be caring about different things each time. It was a little on the unusual side. But the first time I met Walter Koenig was at our maybe second Chicago Comic-Con, which would be around 1977, 78, or maybe it's our third. And he was just there. One of the retailers was tight with him, and he was in, so he says, "Why don't you come to the convention?" He says, "Ah, cool." And he went to the convention. And that's where I was introduced to him. And, you couldn't do that today. You'd have mobs, and people would get hit in the face with
your cane.
backpacks.
Or your
So
cane.
it was my cane. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so the fun part about it was that I told Tom that, next time we're at a show together, I'll go and I'll get him to sign it. That way you don't have to interact with him, but you can still get him to sign it. And it happened to be that next New York, and we were there, and I said, let's do it. And we split the cost. I had Andy Price was next to him, so I brought something from Andy to get signed. And so it was the first Comic-Con after COVID, so there was a plexiglass up in front of him, and I handed it, to the people, and they pass it in front of him with the plexiglass, and he looks at it, and he goes, "Are you Tom?" And I said, "No, it's a friend of mine." And he just goes, "It's funny," and then he signed it. So I mean, and then 2 days later, he went to space.
For real.
Yeah,
and he just announced that he's also going to go to space again posthumously.
Really? I did not hear that.
Yeah, they're squeezing him into a little diamond. They're getting George Reeves's corpse or something to squeeze him into a little diamond. There's a kicker to this story, so hang on. And they're going to put him on the rocket ship and fire him out to space. Anybody can do it. It only costs $150,000. Now, one of the guys who was involved with the company, or one of the companies that led up to the current company, because these companies change hands every 20 or 30 minutes, Rick Obadiah, publisher, First Comics.
Really?
And I used to kid him about that, not during First, but he died a few years ago, and that's what he was doing then.
That's what he was doing at that point, at that time?
Well, he was doing a lot of Strange Death stuff. He really did encapsulate the spirit of First Comics. He, those Atlantis reef burials, he was involved with that. And custom-made coffins that they sold at Costco. Now, I was probably stranger than Rick, but I had to work at it.
I don't know. That would be a good contest to figure out who was stranger. I think we might have to do some voting on that one.
I outlived.
Well, that's true.
So I have an unfair advantage that I'm still breathing oxygen.
You win. Okay, is that how it works?
You haven't hit your ceiling yet.
No.
You have more.
Look, I was driving from Connecticut to Chicago, actually to southern Wisconsin where he lived. We were going to have dinner the day after he died. I heard about it that morning, and I was in Ohio at the time at a rest stop. So that was a very traumatic experience. Rick was a fun guy. You can say what you want about him. There's a lot to be said. Interesting guy, but he was fun.
Good. I want to turn a little bit to current Star Trek. Like we kind of talked about, your experience before. Picard season 3. Let's talk about that first because that just ended recently before we got back to things. So I have not watched season 3, but I'm sure both of you have. I did watch most of season 2 and I watched some of season 1. And so Mike, Tom told me that season 2 of Picard made his brain hurt. And I understand. So what's your opinion on that show in general?
On the second season or on the show?
The show in general, but you could go into seasons if you think.
Okay. Actually, each of the 3 seasons were quite different.
Sure.
And taken as a whole, I think that's interesting. The second season, the editor in me was poked a lot during that second season because I think they had a really great 6-part story that they stretched to the breaking point. There were great moments, certainly wonderful right. Sherry, who may be the only living human being who watches this thing, just agreed. So they're also Bob's wife, by the way. Absolutely. It ran too long. It's just that simple. Yeah.
Sean
we're getting a lot of feedback now. It just ran too long. It wasn't bad. It could have been better. And, they wrote off the best characters they had.
Could it have been better? You don't think
totally
so?
Different. I'm sorry?
Mike, Tom disagrees. It couldn't have been better. That's as good as it gets.
Could have
been worse.
It can always be worse. I think it was. The first season is clunky, but has its heart in the right place. The second season, made me dumber. I thought it was lazy in a lot of places. It doesn't make any internal sense more than normal time travel stories. It doesn't make sense with it. And it told the story backwards and the message was wrong. But the third season, because the scenes between Picard and Q should have been reversed. It should have been Picard teaching Q and not the other way. But the third season, first of all, it did the thing that I was yelling at during the entire second season: less scenes of Patrick Stewart running and more scenes of Patrick Stewart talking, because he had hit the point where we just don't need to do action scenes with a 90-year-old. And season 3 totally steered into that, and he commands the screen again, and he plays old in certain places, and you can tell when he can kick it up a notch and get some of the old fire back. There's super little things about the third season, and there's one episode that I think is edited poorly, and I have theories about it. But other than that, after that episode, it just takes off and never looks back, and it's just everything I wanted in a reunion show.
And it was a reunion show. And it was a long reunion show. Reunion shows generally last maybe 2 hours, and that's it. Here, they took what is good about streaming television, something that the British figured out back in the 60s, but it takes us longer.
Wow.
Come on, we should have dumped the tea years before. And
this is going to come into play when we talk about the next Star Trek show.
Okay, all right. It was a good tribute, but it actually moved things along. There was character development. We can argue whether it was necessary character development or to what extent it was forced. Obviously, the data stuff is going to feel a little forced. It's not who the guy was, and nor is it who he wound up being. But that, in and of itself, is kind of interesting. The rest of it, when people would stand up to Picard, and a number of people did, and that was beautiful because you're just not used to that. And you're seeing this old man, experienced, well aware of his experience, have to look at things from perspectives that you never saw him look at before. And I thought that was great.
Yeah. All the people that he had trained essentially had grown up and become their own people. And then he had to deal with them on that aspect. And
he had to deal with his own success.
I don't know if because I thought I saw the Emmy nominations had come out.
I haven't looked
but
at
they did.
I believe that was Harrison Ford nominated?
He was
for
not.
Shrinking?
He was not. And
because I think the best performance on TV that season is Harrison Ford, and a supporting actor is Harrison Ford. But number 2, surprising everybody, is Jonathan Frakes, who just knocked it out of the park in a way that he had never done before. Like he was always competent, but I think something about directing for 15, 20 years he was just radiant in a way that he didn't always capture before.
And it was clear the little bits and pieces he'd done between, Next Gen and Picard 3. He did little bits and pieces in character, and it seemed like he was enjoying it. Now, it just could mean he was just being really professional, and that's great. That's what we expect. But he seemed to be enjoying it, and Picard 3 closed that deal. We know he enjoyed it. And we enjoyed seeing him enjoy it, even when it looked like they were all going to die, which is part of Star Trek. So it was very gratifying. I don't know how people who hadn't seen Next Gen would relate to it. I mean, I can see how they could. I just don't know anybody who's gone through that. Because to me, that show felt like it was done for those of us who watched the original broadcasts back in the late 80s. So, I felt catered
to. So that's interesting. And I will say that. So I didn't watch Next Generation as when it came on. I've watched a bunch of episodes, and I haven't watched it from beginning to end. There was times when I had people in my life and whatever, but I do like the show and I like it a lot. It's not my I'm more of a TOS guy. Like that's my jam, and I love all of that, and that's kind of why this kind of leads into the new show, Strange New Worlds, feels a lot more like that, with a lot of nods to the other shows, to Next Generation and even Deep Space Nine, and there's a lot of things that Strange New Worlds kind of incorporates. But one of the things that it does is it feels a lot more like the original series than any other Star Trek since the original series.
And so, with malice aforethought, right? I mean, it's very clear that that's what they're trying to do. Right. But boy, they've taken it much further because half a century later.
We're going to talk about the captain of the Enterprise, or oh no, this guy.
Right.
Okay, wait. I got to tell you a story that's incredibly
wait, about this?
A little bit, yeah.
Go ahead.
So I was at Dragon Con, ran into a friend of mine, and he saw me. That it was Dragon Con was the first show in forever that I've done Star Trek, or I've done cosplay. I've dressed like Pike, because if I'm going to be in my Clooney years, I'm going to steer into it. And he and his wife were there and met us, but he wound up at a party with Anson Mount. And his wife looked and said, "Hey, that's your friend over there."
Oh
and
my
he looks
gosh.
and goes, "Where?" "Over by the pole." And he
That's not
says,
fair.
"That's Anson Mount." So
That's not fair.
I felt bad that his wife is losing her vision like that. But yeah, John Hudgens, you can check it actually happened.
Yeah, I'm getting compared to the Lorax, and you're getting compared to Anson Mount. So I really loved last season of Strange New Worlds. I thought it was tight. I thought it explored the cast, even though there were characters I did not like. It was heartfelt. There was loss. There was growth. I thought it was excellent. So now we're halfway through, I think, this next season.
Yeah, a little bit past.
Well, episode 5 came out last week.
Oh, was that 5?
Yeah,
I can't even count anymore.
Yeah. So it was 5. We're 5 episodes in. I will say, and just to preface this discussion, that as I was finishing watching episode 5 the other night, I happened to be scrolling on Facebook, and the Word Balloon, which is our good friend John Suntress, was having his Sunday night chat with Franco, and Mitch Halleck was there, and Wayne, who's a friend of ours, and they were talking about it. And let me tell you, John hates that show. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He was very upset with the way that show is coming along. And I know we're gonna get into it, but I will say that when I talked to the guys, for those out there, about doing this, this was I think Mike's request that we spend a lot of time talking about Carol Kane. So
yes,
with that. Let me tell you, I was overjoyed to see her there, but and she's great. She does a great job. I need more of her. That's one thing I feel about this season, is that I don't feel like I'm getting enough Pike. I don't feel and I don't feel like I'm getting enough of her. There's everyone remembers her from there, and Sean also agrees. Like, there are some things about this season that are writing wise I have some gripes with. I still love the show, and as I tweeted out last night or the night before, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like every 8 minutes, I'm like, I love the show, because there's moments in every episode where I'm like, this is what I want. This is good writing. This is a good story. Like, and I want to kind of, before there are going to be spoilers. Anybody who please stay. We're not gonna destroy it for you. But this is a show. Even if we tell you spoilers, go watch the show if you haven't. But I want to talk about the tomorrow episode for a second, which is the time travel episode for this season. What did you think of that? What did you think of the predicament that the person I hated last season, who I actually liked this season, had to put herself in?
Well, I think you just answered your own question.
I was so glad when she left last season, but I love
the character you hated. They put meat on.
Yeah. Well, there was meat on her. I just didn't like it.
Well, now you do. At least more so than you did. That's character development. I have to admit, when they did the time travel thing, it's like, no, you guys just turned a profit. You don't have to do this shit, but because, that's what Star Trek always does. Let's do a time travel story so we can use some existing sets and save a few bucks.
Sure.
And it's been run a little too much, as you pointed out, the second season of Picard. But they managed to do character development within that episode. A lot of character development that probably could not have been done that way had they not done the time travel story. So I'm fine with that. They made it work for me. Now, I'm not trying to say that this show is like the greatest thing in the world. It is. It's a good show. It's a damn good show. It's very well written. It's brilliantly performed, and often well directed. There's a little sloppiness here and there, but that could be time constraints. I don't know. I'm making excuses for them. But it's a worthy attempt, and I'm interested. I love the sense of humor that they've really brought out in the second show, the second series, because that sense of humor is not like that which you generally see on television. It's all character related. The humor comes out of the characters that have already been developed. So it's easy, really, for me to respond to that humor because it fleshes out some of those characters, and it's not just going for the joke. I love the fact that Pike is a cook, and he communicates through his cooking. His diplomacy is through his cooking. So that's interesting. I haven't seen that in a show before.
Yeah.
Could have been done in Nero Wolf, but it would have been wrong.
What do you think, Tom? What do you think of the tomorrow episode?
It was okay. I find overall with the second season that it's a good B effort. I think there's a sophomore slump happening for a bunch of reasons. There's an aspect of it, and like it's just baggage I'm bringing to it, where it felt lazy in that I didn't need to see Khan again. I don't think the timeline works even as much as they try to change it. That just stay away from it. Like, don't stop going back there. And then for them to go to Toronto. Like, I get what Mike's saying about the cheaper sets, but I always like when they would go to San Francisco in the 21st century or in the 1930s New York or somewhere that wasn't just outside the set.
Right.
And speaking when we were talking about the British system, it's where Strange New Worlds is becoming particularly unsatisfying for me, because I understand that Anson Mount had a child and wanted to spend, or wasn't around for as many episodes. But the first episode felt like filler to get to the second episode, which was good, but didn't have Pike, which got to the third episode, which still wasn't a Strange New Worlds episode. Like, they've gone back to the original mission statement of Star Trek to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life, new civilizations, which is one of the reasons to feel right. But we've had one where the Rigel episode, which was the one that felt the most like a classic episode.
But that wasn't a new world.
They
had to go back.
Right. But that mission felt very much like the ship goes to a planet and has an adventure rather than
that's right.
Time travel and And there's still aspects of, I keep calling her Lieutenant Hitler, that I don't understand, because I'm pretty sure you can change your name in the 22nd century, 23rd century, and I need an explanation why, for as horrible as her backstory is, why she is steering into it. That's the thing that I haven't been able to get to.
Here's my issue. Like, I enjoyed that episode. I knew what was going on with it. I knew where, it was good. It was fulfilling because I could see where it was going, and you kind of like that when sometimes, you've already know what's going on. So I get that. I felt that episode there were some plot points and lazy points that I didn't like. One is that they never told us what time they went back to until the very, very end, which was uncomfortable because I was trying to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And and then when Khan was a child, I'm like, wait, where, what, when? Like, it should have been. It was very simple to say, oh, in 1992, this bridge exploded, like or whatever it was. That's a simple line that they could have said, and they didn't. And it felt like they didn't because they didn't know what they were doing. Like, that's the way it kind of feels.
I don't understand the point of seeing Khan as a kid in that episode. Is it to say that his nature eventually wins out? Is it to say that he was raised so poorly? Like, I don't think they knew what they were saying, and there's lots of questionable messages to take from it.
Well, we're doing that.
And yeah,
They've said that. Like, for example, he has to let those kids die. Like that's part of the writing in this show is that he has to save those kids or whatever for whatever reason. The event that happens that causes Pike to be in we know about
yeah.
He cannot prevent
Right.
that, because if he prevents that, it's going to kill other things. So, like, again, she has to let
it violates his contract.
Right.
Federation.
Well, he the thing is, right, it's something where these writers have said, like, you can't alter the timeline, you can't. So she had to protect it, like, and there's kind of that TVA thing in there, which I kind of didn't like, but like she had to protect him, and I kind of liked that. I didn't need to see him. I kind of like the concept. It would have been,
yeah.
I would have preferred for her to have to make that choice to protect him, because also she left a gun on the table.
Yeah.
She walked out of the room and left a gun on the table with a child.
I don't think they knew how they were ending it. And I think they knew what they were
realize
saying.
They were in Canada.
On top of that, they keep trying to split the difference with the genetic engineering. I get that they've set a thing up where you can't be genetically engineered in Star Trek. Like, that's your canon, fine. But they keep implying that the augments get artificially angry, that they're more prone to outbursts. You see that in the trial episode. And it's like, either the augments have like a ticking time bomb in them, or they don't, but you can't do both. It just reminds me of, like, in that third X-Men movie when they invent a cure for mutanism, and Halle Berry is like, we don't need to be cured, and Rogue is like, my touch causes people to die. Like, I might need this.
Right.
Kind of the same way. Like, you've got Lieutenant Singh being worried about what her genetic back history is, but they're never actually saying that they think it might be a problem. Like, either it is a problem or it isn't, but you need to decide which side of the fence you're on with that.
I think that at the end of the first season, they built a brick wall and spent the beginning of the second season running up against that brick wall. And they could have resolved it differently. But I'm guessing here, but they're trying to have each episode be kind of a standalone. I mean, they have a bridging backstory going, but each one should stand on its own. Well, then, once you know that, which is a shame because you shouldn't, but once you know that none of this stuff is going to last long.
Well,
and they put her and the entire Federation philosophy in a very difficult position. And I agree with you both. They did not adequately resolve that. And I think it was the time constraints. I think they just said, oh, shit, we're stuck with this. Let's get rid of this. I mean, they have to get rid of it. They don't have any choice.
One of the things that they did really well, I think, last season, and I don't mean this, for those people watching, watch this show. I mean, it's good, and we're nitpicking. It's some of the best Star Trek that's been in a long time. I agree, but one of the things they did really well last season was, I lost that. Do with establishing that we're watching stuff that we know how it ends, right? Like, we know that at the end of this, at some point, Pike is going to have that accident, and Kirk is going to be the captain of the ship. Like, that's what they've said to us, right? So we've actually seen Lieutenant Kirk, right? We've seen him once last season or twice last season. We're going to see him this episode coming up and the other episode. And
hopefully he'll be murdering his brother.
So there's maybe Sam changes his name to Jim. But Brad's chiming in. Thanks for joining, Chad, Brad. But they did a good job of kind of saying, like, this is what we're going to come. We're going to hit that point where we're going to get to the original series, right? We're going to see Pike in the Menagerie episode. We're going to, all that stuff. But
Think so?
I'm not in this, not in
seen,
this series. We've seen it. That's what happens in this timeline, right? But like Kirk has now kissed Khan's ancestor, right? So there's like, he's gonna meet, he's gonna meet Khan.
Well, no, because that Kirk doesn't make it out.
No, yeah, that's true.
And that was another. Right. It's another thing that bothered me about that episode is that
Kirk but she's gonna be.
Well, no, I mean, because he had no. Wait. Because if Kirk had sacrificed himself, knowing that he's not going back to his own timeline, Leanne could try to grab the weapon from the Romulan, and then it's two professionals and Kirk going, it doesn't matter if I do this or not. It doesn't matter if I make it out of this. You're going to save us. You're going to save the timeline. And it could be two professionals deciding to do this, but instead Kirk sacrifices himself, and then Leanne is still at gunpoint, and it makes me think you're a really bad security officer. And it's I think Kirk needed to die, but I think you could have played it so it was a bigger and better moment for Leanne than what they did.
I agree that she. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, there's a point in every heroic fantasy story. I mean, in the long run, continued story, where somebody's going to make a noble and heroic sacrifice for the greater good. In this case, the greater good of the timeline, which I'm not sure I would make a sacrifice for, because I know about string theory. I don't. So whenever it's like the flashback scenes, it's like they're going back in time, the time travel scenes. And I meant both of those things. You know what's going to happen. The moment that you realize that the character is put into a situation where he's going to have to choose between self-sacrifice or not, the show's over, because you know he's going to do it. I'm more interested in that person not doing it, and then everybody beating the shit out of him or something. I mean,
right?
Give me something different.
There's no reason that his timeline couldn't have continued to exist, and he could have gotten back to that. I mean, that could have happened,
and we also don't know that it didn't.
Sure, I mean, there's some weird. I mean, it was. It's an interesting episode because it was flawed in many ways. It was good. It was well acted. It was well played out, but like the plot points behind it, like you wonder why they are, and are they coming to come back? Like obviously this, we know that Kirk is going to be in this episode, and there's I think there's an image of them both in uniform together where I think she may meet him this time, right? Like, and does she? And like, then how does that work out?
Tune in tomorrow, folks.
Well, tomorrow and tomorrow.
Day after tomorrow. Yeah.
Is it Wednesday? I thought it was Wednesday. Or is it Thursday?
I think it's Tuesday. I don't know anymore. I think it's Thursday.
No, today's Tuesday. But when does the show come?
Today's Tuesday. Thursday.
Thursday. Okay.
Did Justified go up today?
I think very shortly. I'm very interested in that as well. So,
yeah, me too. I do want to see more of Oswald in that show. But
yes,
I don't think it'll happen.
I don't think so.
I don't think Pat will be back.
I think he's dead. I'm pretty sure he's dead. Right? Didn't he die?
I don't know. There was one season where he was on every show I watched. Now, okay, I watched like 6 or 7 different shows that season.
He was also in a Marvel movie that same season.
Yeah, I mean, he was in like everything. I mean, I love the guy. And by the way, let me give credit where credit is due. He was a major contributor to our fund for John Ostrander when we were,
Really?
for all those eye surgeries and stuff. And there were many others, and I thank each and every one of those folks to the bottom of my soul. But he's a funny guy, and he's a better actor than you would think.
Oh, he's a very good actor. I think he's a great actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to kind of wrap up the Star Trek stuff, and then I want to talk about Thom a little bit. So I don't know if we can do that, but
screw Thom. Let's talk about Carol Kane.
My favorite subject.
Well, let's. All right. So
what does Thom think about Carol Kane?
Can we all agree that there's not enough Carol Kane?
No, I disagree.
There's
wow, yeah. The expression on your face was wonderful. She is a gentle character. Too much of her might make her annoying.
Oh, I understand that.
Slowly flesh her out. I mean, there's so much going on there. What did she do 1,000 years ago? What does she do 1,000 years from now? There's so much hinted at. Take your time. Do it slowly.
Yeah. Yes, but you can't have Amanda show up and know her and say, well, conveniently, she's not on the ship for reasons which don't need exploring at this juncture.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Look, do you remember Superboy? The original Superboy, the one who was the adventures of Clark Kent as a young man or as a teenager.
Are we talking about the
John Haynes Newton?
Are we talking about the TV show?
No. Superboy, the comic book character from the 50s and 60s and 70s. One problem with Superboy, enormously successful, ran for decades. You knew Kryptonite Kid wasn't going to kill him.
Right.
You knew that Lex Luthor, young Lex Luthor, wasn't going to kill him. You knew he wasn't going to die. That piece of kryptonite that somebody found is not going to bother him for long, because he grows up to be the Man of Steel. And Strange New Worlds has that same burden.
Mm-hmm.
That's a burden that almost crushed the Enterprise series, which had a lot of things that almost crushed it during those first 2 seasons at least. But you knew ultimately everything was going to be okay because they got history. The idea, like you say, the idea of Pike making it through the series is great, but ultimately he's not going to. He's not going to make it through the Star Trek life.
But we know Spock is.
Kirk.
But we know Spock is going to make it, and we know that Uhura is going to make it all the way through.
So, I agree that they have too many characters that I know about, because I know, like in the Gorn episode from last season, when they went down and they had Chapel and they had Sam Kirk and they had Uhura, I think, and they had Pike and they had Spock and they had Lieutenant Tubby and Ensign Superfluous. And it was, they might as well have been wearing red shirts. Right. And I don't understand why, like, the only characters we knew from the original, from the menagerie, from Pike's Enterprise, we knew Pike and we knew what happened to Spock and nobody else. And they populated it with characters that we know what happens to. So, like, I think they have too many of those. I thought last season's finale was beautiful to give me a scene that explains exactly why Spock risks his career to get Pike. I like being able to do that amount of fleshing out, but they have too many characters that I know what are like. I don't like individually anyone works, but I don't need Mbenga. I would be happy to help make Jess Bush an American citizen should she show desire, but I don't know that we need a Chapel. Like, it's All
right. Well, speaking of Chapel. You want to talk about this past episode? You want to talk about charades? Because you hit us with the line. I think it was the line.
I did.
It was the most offensive scene in any Star Trek ever was in this episode. That is what you said.
Might be, yes.
Okay.
Do you know what scene I'm talking about?
There's a couple that can hit that, so I'm not 100%.
I don't either. And by the way, I'm also speaking for uh, Adrian Nash, who kind of, you know, owns this place or something. I think she and Bob, I have no idea what the relationship is, but
She's
we
the
It's
watched it.
complicated. It's
HBIC.
like the con backstory. Just don't deal
Listen,
with it.
she is
Yeah,
the
that's
HBIC.
exactly
I
right.
do what she says, and that's how it goes.
And
I answer to two women. She's one of them.
well, you've made two good choices because I know them both. They're very good people. But I asked her after Tom's Facebook message. I said, "Did I miss something? Was there something highly offensive I didn't see?" She agrees with me. So, what offended you?
The bacon. I'm literally not kidding. Spock is a
I believe
vegetarian.
you, but I am waiting for an explanation.
He's a vegetarian.
Spock is a vegetarian. Yes, it's established in the old show. It's a whole thing in all
I
our
did not know that.
yesterdays. I have had animal flesh and I've enjoyed it. It is a consistent thing with his character that Vulcans in general, but he specifically is a vegetarian. And suddenly his Vulcan half is removed and he's like, pigs are delicious. And it can't be that it's lab grown meat because there's a whole scene before where Pike is saying you can't use replicated stuff. You have to use natural stuff. It's got to be actual animal bacon. And suddenly he loses his Vulcan half. And I get all the other like split stuff, him getting jokes, him being more personable, him being more tactile. I get that. But like, if you separated my Irish and German halves, I'm still Catholic. Like, I don't throw that away just because half of me is not there. It's not, my Catholicism is not genetic. It's, it's how I was raised. And the same way, I don't understand, like, it bothers me that somehow Spock is in a different mind. Like, you could have conceivably played it differently, but someone who holds that kind of philosophy about what they're eating, I don't understand. It's like, well, this is like super tasty. And you could have done it. You could have done it with cinnamon. You could have done it with, there are tons of breakfast foods that Spock could have gone, oh my God, this is so good. Why was I not having this before? Without it also being, Bade Pig in the City is also delicious.
Right. I mean, you're right. I'm not arguing with you.
I'll argue.
It was intentionally, like, the concept is that if you take what the argument that they're making is that, oh, well, humans just eat pig like crazy, right? And there are plenty of humans.
We eat bacon, a particular part of the pig. I know people, and
there are religions that are human religions
that
they don't eat bacon.
Yes, right. There are. I understand that. You'd never see my father eat a pig. He might pat one on the head, but he would not have ever eaten a pig. My mother and I were not like that. But bacon is not food. And to tell you the truth, anything that's really offensive to vegans, because I've had some really horrible experiences with vegans, that's okay by me. So, and I'm perfectly willing to believe that in order to not like bacon, something I haven't had in months, by the way, in order to not like bacon, you have to do the Vulcan emotional control bit in order to keep yourself away from that. Evidently, Vulcans spend a lot of time not eating bacon.
So that's all their time not eating bacon.
Yeah.
Hey, it didn't hurt my father. He lived to 90. But my mother ate bacon and she lived to 97.
Okay. I see your point. That was not the thing that I didn't enjoy about the episode. It was not my favorite. I felt that, and this is sorry for spoilers, Robert, but there's a lot of, and this is where some other people have said things. This episode essentially was a dealing with the Spock Chapel issue. And to be honest with you, I would have been fine with that if it ended there. Like if this was the time where we're going to say, okay, we're going to deal with the Spock Chapel thing, and we'll be done with it, and then we'll move on to get to some of the other things. Like there's a Gorn War coming that Admiral April said we have to watch out for. We haven't gotten to any of that. It didn't end in a way where we are now back to we're back to this is now something we're still going to have to deal with.
Right. So I don't think that I would have done what they're doing with Spock and Chapel, but I think it's a viable option, and I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. I think that, and I know this, it kind of plays in with the bacon thing, but I feel like the Vulcans always had a sense of dignity. Like the character, they would make fun of the characters, but it was never like they were still an honorable Federation race. And I feel like the Vulcans have been played for laughs all season. But this also, and played for laughs without the counterbalancing, also fine and noble members of the Federation. But this also goes to what I was trying to slip in about the British format. I don't think anything has to be everything. Like there's no reason every show on Paramount Plus or minus needs to be 10 episodes. But the problem is that we've had 5 episodes and only one has been a classic Trek episode, and we know that we're getting the Lower Decks episode. Right. So we've got, and one's going to be a season finale. So you're giving me 3 classic episodes,
and there might be
lucky, and is that pacing?
Well, I also think there might be a musical in there too.
Probably, and that's like I think the tomorrow episode is a great episode 18. I don't know that it's a great episode 3.
It's interesting because we're coming to this conversation. This conversation is coming up in general about this type of storytelling, and it is also part of what is causing the news about the strike. I think that the way television has changed and the industry changed to it. While we enjoy it in a lot of ways, it can be problematic to the consumer, and obviously it is to the creators as well, or the actors and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree with you. I commented, and this is kind of what, and I'm going to steal John's thunder a little bit, because part of what Suntress was saying is exactly this, that the time, the amount that we're getting here, we're not getting the things that we want to. And I said they're doing Bendis style storytelling. It's going to take forever, which I'm okay with if we're getting good quality along the way. But I also don't know that I'm going to get a season 3 or a season 4, and we can get to those things. Like if you're going to give me 20 episodes in season 1, but make it 2 seasons and there's a break between them, and I get all this good stuff, but at the end of it I get something good, I'm fine with that too. The problem is that we get anxious as viewers because we don't know how much more of this we're going to get. We feel like they're wasting our time because the format is smaller.
Let me ask you a question. Are you still waiting for a 3rd season of Faulty Towers?
Yes.
So am I.
I still want a 2nd season of Prophet. So.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah, I hear you.
I want a good 2nd season of Heroes. I'm still waiting for that.
I'll tell you. Well, good luck with that. I'll tell you though. I mean, we don't know that streaming is the future. A year ago, we believed it because we were still, sort of with that COVID thing. Mm-hmm. Now it seems people don't want to do anything. I get the streaming collision, because you could be spending $200 a month easy on all of these different services.
I think I am,
and you're not getting your dollar's worth. Yet cable sucks, and quite frankly, broadcasting isn't doing much, even when everybody isn't out on strike. And broadcast TV always reaches for the same thing because it makes them the most money. They're going to do, quote, reality, end quote, television.
That's me. Sorry, I
Right.
don't know who that is. It'll keep.
All right. Well, we'll just ignore them. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about you for a minute. So Booth 2000, is that
I'm
right?
clearly in demand. Yes,
Exactly.
Booth 2000, Booth of the Future from 23 years ago.
Where everyone will show up this extended weekend in San Diego.
Yes.
One of the things about that when I talk about you to other people is I find that your story, the stories that you tell, your own stories, that are not work for hire, that are your creator own stuff, is extremely accessible and funny and entertaining. A lot of times it feels like you're writing to me. And I find that with so many of my favorite writers.
Thank you.
And when you're approaching a story, how do you have your audience in mind? Like, as you're like, do you target it at all? Say, I want this type of person, or I know that I'm going to hit this person and maybe that person too, and I want to make sure that I have things for multiple people. Do you think about your audience as you come up with a story?
Sometimes, not always. I think the story is the story is the story. Like, I want to tell the story that's the true story. So I don't want to change things to make the story hit a different market, but like I'm working on a kids book right now about cats, and that is definitely title, aimed at a younger market. I kind of feel, and this will probably sound weird and get taken out of context. I don't think everything has to be for everybody. I just think everybody should be able to like it. Like, I remember when I was in art school, I loved watching the Winnie the Pooh cartoon on Saturday mornings. And it was not targeted towards me, but it was just adorably done and awesome. Working on My Little Pony, you have that happen where it's written for 5-year-old girls, but if there's more to it for you, that's awesome. But you're not who we're writing this for. We're not writing it for adults. We're writing it for kids, and you get to enjoy it along the way. So if I write a thing that is aiming at an audience, I want everybody to be able to read it, but it doesn't mean that I'm writing for every person out there.
Winsor McCay, who in my mind was the Ernie Kovacs of comics. His second, I think, maybe third cartoon. He invented animation as we now know it, and he drew every cell by hand. And his second or third cartoon was about the sinking of the Anastasia in World War I. It's a great cartoon, but the boat was fired on and it sinks and everybody dies. They weren't writing that for what we think of today as the cartoon audience.
Right.
Even though there's adult cartoons and there's children's cartoons. We had Rocky and Bullwinkle in 1961, and it was both. So what you do is you tell the best story that you can that is meaningful to you, or possibly even totally contrived by you for your intended market. It doesn't matter. It's how good or not good that story is when you're done. So when somebody says, you don't write this for the right audience, I'm thinking, I think that's a compliment. That may be a compliment.
Mm-hmm. I write for people with class and taste.
That's right. That's right. And the cost of doing business. I mean,
mm-hmm. Yes, and for the fine people at Loan Depot who hold the mortgage on my house.
There you
go. I felt that way. I felt that way about the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. I every time I walked into that movie, I'm like, I'm gonna go watch this movie. This is not for me. This movie is not written for me. It is not made for me, and I found myself having an enjoyable time. Every one of them, they were fine enough movies. My kids loved them. My youngest, particularly, who they all have their own Spider-Man, but that's kind of a good way of putting it. Like, you will find and that there is people who it's not meant for necessarily. There is definitely a target audience for things enjoying it. I think there's a lot of stuff that I read on Webtoon that was not meant for me. It was not written for me, but I found it to be good and enjoyable.
Right. And who knows? Maybe you'll find something new that you'll like.
Well, we're hoping that that's what happens when everybody goes to booth 2000 at San Diego Comic-Con this weekend.
Well, if they go to the booth and check it out, they will. Because that's, God knows which convention 1,000 years ago, that's what happened with me finding Thom's stuff. You go to the convention, you look at the table, and it's like, hey, this isn't bad. And then maybe you gibber to the guy who created it, and you move on, and like the next convention, hey, this is better.
You guys keep talking because I'm going to go grab something because I just brought something up.
Oh yeah, his pizza's ready, I'm sure. By the way, my brain drifted over to Russia for a second. It's the Lusitania that was sunk.
Okay.
I was totally wrong. I don't know where that came from. But, the nice thing is, I'm at that age where I can just babble and people go, all right, how all these crazy. I'm not so old that I didn't remember in time to correct myself during the broadcast.
There's so much stuff we hold in our brains now that,
That's right.
Like when it was, the reason I can name all 79 Star Trek episodes, usually in order, is because I only had those for 10 years. Like, that's all there was. Like, I could super obsess on it. You want me to name a title of a Voyager episode? Cannot do it, Caretaker. But aside from that, I can't do it. There's just more stuff in there. So, but that's a good thing. I like having more content.
My wife, Adrian's mother, used to say that she doesn't have room in her brain for any more stuff, and she died at 60. And I've made it past that, and well past that, actually. And I'm sure there's stuff I've forgotten. My problem is, I don't have to push stuff out in order to add more stuff, which I love doing. I just have to push it back a little bit. So it takes me more time to access it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So one of the things we're kind of talking about, I can't hear myself very well.
You sound fine.
At shows, like, you're gonna find things, finding Thom's booth. This is for Mike because Thom's already seen this, but when we were at Heroes, and this is for the folks out there, you never know what you're gonna find. You never know who is gonna be at a show. One of the rising stars in comics right now, I met at a show a year and a half ago or so, and she's now nominated for like 5 Eisners.
Right.
And she just announced something today that she's going to be doing with Tim Seeley, which looks fantastic. But anyway, I was gifted a old program from a show from the second existence of NovaCon, which was somewhere out in Washington. And this is from 1973. And inside this con program is this drawing of the spirit.
Yeah.
Okay. This was drawn by a 17-year-old Dave Stevens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you never know what you're going to find at a show. There's going to be amazing talent. There's going to be so many people at San Diego, and I can promote San Diego. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think everybody should go there. And anybody who's watching and wants to share this out, there's going to be plenty of stuff to do. even if there aren't any actors, even if there's not going to be Hall H episodes with people or sessions with A-list actors, there's going to be plenty of people. Oh yeah, like Sean Von Gorman of comics, he will also be there.
Right.
So, and if he wasn't working right now, he probably would have been talking to us. But he's apparently he's working very hard because he's in our comment section.
There's this fanzine back in the days when fanzines were fanzines. The 1960s, the Beatles were still together. It was called Star-Studded Comics.
Star-Studded
Comics.
Comics.
Out of Texas. And it contains some beautiful artwork, great storytelling for its time. And its time was over 50 years ago. So when you look at Jim Starlin and Alan Milgram and Rich Buckler and guys like that who went on to careers, some of them very worthy careers, you could blackmail those guys by taking those fanzines to a convention and just showing them around. Hey, this is Jim Starlin's work. Aren't you embarrassed? And they would be. The beautiful thing is watching them grow. Now, I didn't know that because I was their age and I wasn't growing. But over the course of time, you can look back and go, yeah, that was pretty cool. I can see how that chicken scratching over there became Walter Simonson. You could see that happen.
I've seen some of his old program stuff too, which is fantastic. Even though it's proto Walter Simonson. Like, have you seen that, Tom?
I haven't. No.
I've seen some of the old work that he did. There was an old somebody, I don't know where I ran across it, but it was a Maryland show from like 74, 75, where there's some stuff of his in there.
Walter posts some of that from time to time.
I think maybe he did. Yeah. But like I said, it's going to be a good show. Is there anything that you can talk to us about that people are looking for? I know that there's season 2 of Cupid's Arrows that's coming soon.
Season 2 of Cupid's Arrows is coming real soon. I'm talking with Rocket Ship about how to do season 3.
That's great.
I'm doing a book for Storm King that hasn't been announced.
When is it getting announced?
We'll still not. I don't know, but I know it's not this week because I checked with them about it. But I'm having a lot of fun doing that.
What we're gonna do is, like, when the season, we're gonna have you back on when the season's over, so we can wrap up the season and then we can talk about things that are not announced. For Strange New World.
Does the season end?
It's at some point. I don't know. Mike lost his lights.
Yeah. Battle stations.
Once again, this happened before. We'll
continue on. But yeah, so we'll have you on. We'll recap the second half of the season, and then hopefully by then there'll be a bunch of stuff we can talk about what's coming out from you, because I know there's some work going on.
Farther, and then some life got in the way.
Well, that happens. It all happens to all of us. But no, I know there's a lot of cool stuff that people are going to be excited about. Is there? I know that this year you're not working so much on. Sean will have opinions. Okay, he's got a lot of opinions. There's not going to be.
I'm glad I was sitting down for that shocking news.
Love and Capes is going to come back at some point. You have some ideas about where we're going to go with that?
I have a couple. I left it really open-ended, but it's the kind of, like, it's a really good leave. Like, I know I'm going to figure out stuff that's interesting about it. There's too much stuff there not to take advantage of. But I don't have a definite plan for any of it, but it'll be fun figuring it out.
That's good. There's so much. There's a lot.
But yeah.
There's a lot where that you left off at the end of last season, and and
that book is one of those books that you could buy at Booth 2000 at
Booth
at
2000
San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Do you take?
And they have over
do you take credit cards? You take plastic?
Cash, credit, perfectly saleable kidneys, whatever you got.
Okay.
PayPal and all that kind of stuff.
That too. Yep. If there's a way for you to give me money, I will figure out how to make that happen.
Venmo.
I don't want there to.
I had to help my wife create a Venmo account so she could pay you once, something like that, for a secret gift.
Yeah. Negotiable bearer bonds like Hans Gruber deals in. Yeah, whatever. Like, we'll find a way.
Not bacon, though.
Yeah. I'm fine with bacon.
Oh, okay.
But
You're not
I wouldn't eat it. I wouldn't eat it on a Friday during Lent, no matter which part of me was split up. So.
Yeah, but that's your choice. I mean, and that's cool.
It is, but it's Spock's choice. That's my point.
Spock's human side was no longer being blocked, and the first thing he went for was bacon.
Well, is
I relate to that.
Is Amanda a vegetarian? Did she
Canonically, I don't know. Yeah. But I can't imagine she was making meat in the house that Spock wasn't allowed to have. So it seems like the kind of thing that she would have adopted, like she adopted so many other Vulcan customs. And I could write the scene where Spock decides to do that because he's embracing his human side and he's trying new things. But like, it's got to be a lot more conscious than like it would have been throw away a deeply held belief as a punchline.
It's interesting. It could have they could have played it where he like realized, oh, I'm vegetarian, or
right,
but they just completely threw it away. Is even more of the issue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, they're. I really like the characters. I really love what they're playing with in this season. I do enjoy it. There are. I don't know if it's familiarity that causes this feeling, but like with this show, there's so many things that I can see where I may have done that differently, or I may have wanted them to say this differently. One of the things that we're coming back to the Carol Kane thing, and this is kind of my complaint about tomorrow, is that she didn't go and talk to her when she got back on the ship. That now they met.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of years ago, and she saw, like that
hold
moment.
that thought.
I'm gonna hold it
because I'm willing to put money on their picking up that one.
That they're gonna come
somewhere
back
along the line. They will pick up that one.
I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting it
It seems to me like that's a thread you leave open for later.
Okay.
Maybe I've been doing comics too much, but that's the way I would play that.
No, I think you're right, but I think that 15 episodes in, they haven't earned that degree of trust with me as much as I enjoy the show.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Because
like second or third season, Babylon 5 could have done that, and I've been like, I know this is going somewhere.
Yeah, that's because you grew up with longer seasons.
Those seasons were longer.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why we grew up that way. Yeah.
It was economically reason. I mean, the structure of the original TV series had a lot to do with economics and the summer break.
Oh yeah, sure. You better believe it. Bessie Lou was not in it for charity.
And I just think with the world we're getting into with streaming and cable and everything, it doesn't have to be anything. Like, I get that Harrison Ford only wants to work 10 weeks to do Shrinking, but you can still do a 20 episode series if you want. Like, there's no, I don't insist that all comic books be miniseries. I just think you can play in multiple formats. And I get, and I'm just picking on you now, but I get why people see the British format and go, oh, why don't we do that? And I would rather, let's do more of it. But there's also lots of shows that are just fine to do 20 episodes. And sometimes Supernatural has an episode that everybody points to as one of their favorites, where they're stuck. It's essentially a bottle episode. They're in an office, reality has changed and they think they have like office jobs. And people love it. And that is exactly the episode that would get cut if you had to cut 3 episodes from the season. But it's got beautiful character moments, and they managed to find a way to make it expand the story. but it's not necessary. You could have got, and I notice it too with a lot of like the even Marvel's Daredevil. I remember people not liking the Kingpin episode because they're like, oh, well, it just didn't have a lot to do with the story. Like, it's like, okay, well, you just wanted Daredevil. Like, if that had been coming out every week, you would have had a different reaction to it than the fact that you were mainlining it. So,
right. I mean, there's a point to that. Like the episode in The Last of Us with Frank and Bill and Frank. There's only 5 minutes of that the main characters have anything to do with. The rest of that episode has nothing to do with the storyline, just giving you some backstory that you could fill in an exposition of 5 minutes. But it's both of them are nominated for best guest actor for an Emmy for that. And it was probably everybody's favorite episode, or a lot of people's favorite episode of that season. But like, it wouldn't have happened. You could have gotten rid of it. Like, and
let us never forget that the first Spider-Man story was published as an inventory piece in the last issue of an already canceled magazine.
Well,
and then somebody went back and said, "Holy shit!"
Yeah. Well, the Avengers was there was an old story I heard about the reason that he did the Avengers was because he was running behind on some stuff or something like that. Like there was did you guys am I completely making this up, or am I the only one who's ever heard this?
I heard that about the Rockford Files, but
the Rockford Files.
Yeah.
No, I meant like I think Stan was behind on some stuff, so threw all the characters together, where you didn't have to write all of them. It was just much easier to just kind of have to throw that book out, because I want to say there was a book that was late that he threw that issue in and threw the Avengers out.
The Avengers, in my estimation, was a Martin Goodman idea.
Okay.
Martin was big on team books. He had a lot of success with team books. He didn't know comics at all, except for how big the numbers were before the comma. That's all he cared about. And that's fine. He's a businessman. He was a businessman. But he really liked the idea of superhero teams. I don't know why. Maybe it was because, by that point in time, DC had been pretty successful with that. And if you're going to do superheroes, that seems to be the way to keep it going, which is still the philosophy behind Marvel Studios. One of the reasons why everything is a miniseries on television, well, forgetting about the fact that Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't know shit from Shinola, is the fact that they own these huge universes, and they want to have all of these characters out there because each character makes them money. There's merchandising and stuff, but there's also the potential, since nobody knows which of all of this stuff is really going to take off. Go for it. Broaden your universe. See what happens. Would Marvel have killed off Moon Knight if the TV show was picked up? Well, that's a legitimate question if you're a cynic. And being a cynic, let me say that I would kill off Moon Knight because the show is coming back, which we'll never know because of the strike and all that, strikes. But that way they could relaunch the book in preparation for all the promotion for the TV show. So it's all, business decisions, maybe good ones, maybe bad ones, but they're still decisions.
Are you saying Kamala Khan is really dead, or she's going?
No, it's already been announced. She's coming back as the New Mutant.
Yeah, she's
now. Thank God I was sitting down for that.
Yeah.
Well,
it's already been announced. She's got a New Mutant outfit on and everything.
The miniseries that was on Disney will be on ABC, which is another way of saying Disney, next month, because they don't have anything else to put up there. So now they have all this fodder they could use because of the strikes. I have to get used to that. Both Warner Brothers, if they realize it, which seems doubtful, and Marvel Studios have all of these miniseries. Well, Doom Patrol will never get on broadcast, but most of them can with a little editing.
Titans
Doom
did.
Patrol wouldn't make it as a doily on broadcast, but
yeah, and there's precedent for it. I know Dexter aired on CBS, so did the first season of Discovery.
Right. No, lots of shows
and
have done that.
Yeah. And that's interesting too with Strange New Worlds, because that last episode, the last episode is season 1. I don't think is a double episode. I think it's just a long episode. Like I don't think it doesn't have that encounter at Farpoint. Here's the clean break.
Right.
Like I don't know if we need to, like, if you're going to go to streaming, you don't have to necessarily do 42-minute episodes anymore. But if you ever want to repurpose them, you need to do a 42-minute episode.
But even with these hour episodes that Paramount is doing, they still do the commercial breaks.
Yeah, I mean, we
because they're syndicating them, in foreign countries or in.
I watch them with commercials, so there you go.
Yeah, me too.
Right, and there is that here domestically. Although I noticed Peacock just raised their rates yesterday. Seems like bad timing. It's a business run by people who have no understanding about business and have no future in their own jobs because they're always looking for their next job. So what they want to do is make as much money for somebody, including themselves, in their current job so they can get a better job and make more money for themselves. It's an evil, ugly business.
So at Booth 2000, I'm selling comics directly for me. I'm not selling for anyone else, just for me.
So is there
Loan
anything?
Depot.
Rock and roll.
What comics are you gonna have?
Let's see. I have Tom and Vine. I have Love and Capes Volume 1, which I managed to get some copies of. I have 5 in the time of COVID and the holiday issue, Home for the Holidays. I've got some of my My Little Pony stuff. I have Cupid's Arrows. I have Warning Label. And then I'll be doing sketches and commissions, and I've got a few prints. I've got a print of the Strange New Worlds cast making breakfast, which has my favorite joke, which is that Sam Kirk is flipping pancakes because that's how he dies. Because the pancake aliens from Operation Annihilate.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You guys are in San Diego now? You're not, Bob?
I'm not going.
No.
I'm not going to be there this year. I will be at Terrificon next weekend.
Tom, hang on. You can plug yourself at the end like you're supposed to.
That's fine. Go ahead. I have nothing.
Tom, there's a pancake place in San Diego called Walker's.
Okay.
Now, I'm very familiar with the Walkers. There's like 6 of them in Chicago, and usually they have each one has a line about 2 hours long going out into the freezing winter, and they're that good. And I've been to the one in San Diego. My daughter's been there more than once. She says it's just as good. So if you're looking for pancake reference,
okay,
for the future, I recommend.
I just wrote that down.
Excellent. We are here for everybody's gastronomical needs.
That's right. Oh, yeah, have a little bacon.
And don't forget Booth 2000 at San Diego Comic-Con this weekend. It is the place to be.
Three of us will be
because
in Baltimore.
We will be in Baltimore.
September in 2 months. That's pretty cool. And at least one of the people who've been writing into the show, for which we thank you, we do, helps run the joint. So we'll all be together in Baltimore.
Yep, Brad left earlier, but Brad will be there. There's good news coming out of Baltimore. I've been talking to people about programming, so there's going to be some as we get closer. We'll pump that up a little bit more. A lot of the people who are in the chat are also going to be there, so we're looking forward to that. And like I said, Pop Culture Squad will be at Terrificon next weekend. I'll be running the Heroes Initiative booth. Sherry's going to come with me. So if you're looking for us there, we will see you there. Tom, I'm going to let you go.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Please.
Since we were talking about Baltimore, were you the one who edited my piece for the yearbook? I know you worked on it.
I designed it. I don't remember editing it significantly. I know we proofread it, but I don't remember.
Well, that's critical.
Yeah. Yes.
That's critical.
Yeah. Bob proofread it. Sherry proofread it. I proofread it. But then I designed the whole page.
Well, it's fun working with you, and I look forward to seeing the output of that.
Yeah,
and you in 2 months.
Yeah, I noticed that the horribly cruel Robert Deans just put 6 weeks to Baltimore, and I'm not ready. I'm glad.
Is it really 6 weeks? Baltimore,
yeah, it's not far.
I trust his math.
6 weeks.
Yeah, I got the final files in week. I got them in as I was at Denver Fan Expo. And I keep communicating. I have to tell my printer that I'm particularly nervous about these kind of things because there's a deadline you're hitting, and it's not like you can sell the book after. Like, you need it for the event that you're going to have it. And I'm like, okay, so everything's okay, right? Like, do you need to send me the F and G's here? Like, I need the book. Where's the book? So I'm on top of that.
Been there, done that. And I have stories. But I have stories.
I have some too, but not for here.
Well, that's for Baltimore.
Well, let's get together in Baltimore and share some of that.
Yes.
Have a great show, Tom. Thank you so much for doing this. We are going to be we're going to be looking forward to having you on again. I'm glad this is your first time on the live SquadCast, but we expect
on
to
the
have
big
you
show,
back, in the future. And
Tom, it was great, and
this was so much fun. Thank you.
I love jousting with you over Star Trek. That's great.
Yes. Well, I am a delight.
Right.
You are.
It was fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
All right, Mike.
Okay.
We are going to give some. We have some schedules coming up. We are back this week, which is great. Thanks to everybody for watching. I think we're going to take a break next week, but the following 2 weeks we already have the guests lined up, and I would like to give you a little.
This comes as news to me, so
yeah. Well,
that's what Bob's doing.
Yeah. So this is why I do this. We're gonna in 2 weeks on the 1st of. We're gonna be here on Tuesday nights at 8:00 Eastern time. Look for us. It's either going to be we'll either be there or we'll be there next week. So we might be multiple weeks, but in 2 weeks on
check
April
out
1st,
popculturesquad.com and you'll find out.
Follow us on all of our social media. It's Pop Culture Squad on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're going to get on to Threads as soon as I talk to somebody about getting a text message so that I can create that account. But in 2 weeks, we are going to have G. Willow Wilson on the show. She has agreed to be on, and stop doing that.
Well, she's got issues.
So we are going to be. We can maybe talk to her about Kamala.
That's great.
But also, she's got a new book that just came out last week that is fantastic. I am a huge fan of hers. She's been a great writer for a long time. I remember when she was writing Air and how incredibly esoteric that book was, but yet so weirdly accessible. just a really good book. And the week after that, we have booked Cullen Bunn. He is going to be on the 8th. We talked to him, so people looking forward to it. We're gonna have some good guests coming up in the next few weeks at least. We're going
to have good guests on forever.
Well, we do. Like, there's the list. There's the list that keeps coming. Eventually, Sean's going to come on because he's just sitting there, like, trying to work and pretending that he's not actually doing anything. But we're going to have good guests on. We'll talk more about Baltimore as it gets closer. We're very excited about what's going to happen there. I don't think you weren't on the big show, Sean. We had you on the regular podcast, but we're gonna get you on the live one at some point.
On the little podcast.
Yeah, which is great. It's a good. I mean, for anybody who's looking for stuff to do, just audio, we do have Pop Culture Squad interview SquadCast, which is just
how long
me.
Can Bob hold that pose?
I can do it a long time. Thank you, everybody, for doing this. We're gonna wrap it up. Thanks, Mike. We'll be in touch. Bob. And everybody, 2 weeks, August 1st, 8 p.m. Eastern. G. Willow Wilson will be on the show, and we cannot wait.
Oh, my column at popculturesquad.com for next Monday, the way it's shaping up, is the most un-American thing anybody's ever written, ever in the history of America. I shit on football.
That is a challenge that I know you are up to. So
thank you.
So I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing it, and I'm sure everybody will. And we'll talk about it in our little Bob and Mike's time next time. So everybody, have a good night. Have a good week. Enjoy San Diego Comic-Con booth 2000 for Thom Zahler and John Gallagher. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Take it easy, folks. Thanks for showing up.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?